Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Out of the Park 23 as the Minnesota Twins, and this is going to be our off-season planning episode. So the first thing that we're going to talk about is going to be arbitration and players leaving, kind of how we're handling all of this. So Emmanuel Rodriguez, we are going to let walk. He really just hasn't proven it at the major league level at all. Where if we look at this kind of overall major league stats, it's 393 plate appearances and a 70 OPS plus. So just really the best that he's done was this 22 game stretch in 2026 where he was a below average hitter. So the fact that he's not an elite defender, can't play center, at that point, I think it's just kind of a move on from him. So Baez played a lot better at the end of the year and in the playoffs, where really a lot of his issues is really this July where he was just awful. And August isn't great either, but September was pretty good. He was good in the playoffs. The defense is still pretty decent. It's not as good this year. 1.5 zone rating isn't great, but it's also only half the season. I don't think we're going to be relying on him to be our center fielder at all next year. I think we have other options for people that I think are better there than him, so he'll just be playing right for us. And I think that extending him long term is probably not in the cards at this point. Okay, he is still normal injury proneness, so that's good. But even though this year was obviously incredible in 2027, 26 was kind of league average. 28, kind of three of these months are pretty league average ish. September was, a good stretch. July kind of counterbalances that. So I think that all things considered, a roughly league average, maybe a little bit above league average hitter who's a good corner outfielder, just to me isn't really a guy that you extend unless he's willing to take something super team friendly, which I might look into that next year, see kind of what our options are that are available. I'm glad we didn't sign him to that big deal that we were looking at last offseason. Gutierrez will bring back. She's going to hopefully take that 1.8 number. Good defensive player. He's a leader, roughly league average hitter. Kind of all fine as far as backup catchers go. This will probably be the last year that we keep him around. His projected number for next year is upwards of 3 million, even though I do expect that to come down because that'll be based on sort of, full season numbers. I don't really see myself keeping him around past this season because we do have those two guys in our minors that are both in AAA right now that could take over as my backup catcher. So not super worried about keeping him around long term. So that's where we are with him. Alvarez, I'm going to bring back, see if it was just a weird season for him. So the FIP being super low here is kind of interesting to me. The strikeout rate is up. The walk rate is in between, but the BABIP is higher than it's been at the major league level. So I don't know. I don't think this 4.91 ERA is correct, but I also don't think that the 3.5 is correct either. I think it's probably somewhere in the more like 4. So is that a pitcher that I want to be paying $3.5 million to? I don't really know. I think we're going to do it for kind of the one more year because I'm not sure full on what I want to do with some other players. But I think we bring him back for kind of at least one more year and sort of see where we go from there. I don't think extending him like we did with Gomez and like I'm going to try to do with Sanchez, is really in the cards for him. I don't think he's an ace type pitcher. I think he's a back end of a rotation guy. Just the stuff just isn't there to really be an elite pitcher. Though you like the 65 stamina quite a bit. I mean, you can see that, especially in 27, where he was giving us, I mean, a solid 5+, like over 5 per start, which he did not do in 26, and didn't really do here in 28 either. So, what we want to do with him, I'm not super sure moving forward. He's been a generally pretty good player for us. So, pending free agents, we're going to let Meyer walk. I've got some guys in AAA that are out of options that I want to give some chances to in that kind of long relief role. So I think letting him walk is fine. Karinchak, we are going to let walk, partially just because he wants a lot of money that I don't really have available at this point. But also because I don't want to lock up that much money into my bullpen. I'm at the point where I have a pretty decent budget, but I'm paying Duran, I'm paying White, and I'm paying Nardi. So at that point, does it really make sense to additionally pay Karinchak? I don't think so. So even though he was pretty good for me for 2 years, have no complaints whatsoever with him, we are going to move on from him. But Buxton, we are going to submit a qualifying offer to. And I legitimately don't know if he's going to take it or not. So the average annual value that he wants is $16 million. So generally my baseline for whether or not I offer a player that qualifying offer is if I don't want to retain them and their ask is over that 19 million number, then I will offer it to them. Whereas if it's under, I just let them walk. Buxton's a different case because I'm kind of fine either way with if he takes it or if he doesn't. I don't know that my kind of two main options in Lara and Lascano, if either of them are really ready. Lara wasn't super great this year at the major league level, but hit pretty well in AAA. And Lascano, I don't think even touched AAA this year. So there's some questions there, and having one more year Buxton in that case would be good. But he's also going to be 35 next year, coming off of a pretty big injury. He still has that wrecked injury proneness where I have to be playing him. Like, he can't play more than, this kind of 115, 120 games in a year. But he's obviously still a super good center fielder according to my scout. So yeah, I think this is a situation where I'm going to give him the qualifying offer and just kind of see what happens, because I don't think that I want to pay him for more than 1 year. Which then what that does to my budget will, if he does take it, will be interesting, because you can see here I did offer a contract to Corbin Burns, which ended up being a 4-year, $120 million contract. It's $32 million in the first year, $30 million the next 2, and then a player option in year 4 for $28 million. He's just been an absolute superstar, and I think having that front 3 rotation wise of Burns, Gomez, and Sanchez will keep me relevant while I try to figure out the offense. Because I think the offense is going to be much more of a concern point for me over the next year or two. Go away, Windows Security. I don't care about you. And if I can have that stud part of the rotation, then I think that will keep me in a good spot. So as far as sort of the general plan, it's as of right now, I think looking something like this. Of it will be probably Collier at second, Miranda at first. I guess we can kind of organize. We'll talk about this more by position. So Hunt is back as our catcher. Signed through 2032. I'd be pretty surprised if I don't take this team option, um, because he's just kind of has been pretty consistently this guy. Um, he's gonna start to come out of his prime over the next couple of years, so maybe the bat just really declines. But even then, he's so good defensively. He hasn't won any Gold Gloves and probably won't win any Gold Gloves, but he's a high end catcher. So keeping him around is good. We talked about Gutierrez. Lots of kind of this first baseman types. Miranda will be back next year. Kind of had his bounce back year after 27 wasn't a super great year for him. But even in 27, it was really just that one super bad month. Home runs down a little bit, unfortunately, but it hit over 300 again. 50 doubles. Pretty good year for him, all things considered. So obviously he sticks around as an Iron Man, which is really nice. He's 30. He's signed for up to 4 more years. I guess up to 3 more years, because these are the 3 that are left. So this next year could potentially be my last year having him around. I don't think that's likely to be the case. I think we'll probably keep him around past that, but we'll see. Kirilloff will be back as our DH. Led the league in RBIs last year. Hitting behind Miranda and Atrian will definitely help with that. Which potentially I think does make him a shop option in this offseason. I think that's something I'm going to consider to try to free up some money between either looking to move him or looking to move Herman Marquez. I think are a couple things that I'm considering. Collier is likely going to start the year as my second baseman. Let's see, what does this look like here? So he hit really well for us. Hit well in the postseason. Was above league average hitter. Obviously, I'd prefer to be playing him at third over at second base, but I think that my thoughts are that I would prefer the better defender at third than at second, because I'm going to be playing Tyler Ayers at third base this year. We'll put him back there because we have the couple of different options for center. What we kind of really end up doing there is going to be a little bit up for grabs. Arroyo is another person who now becomes a big question mark, because Correa will probably be more of my utility infielder. Because I can't really do much with him. I can't trade him. I don't really want to just release him and eat all of this money. And maybe he's just okay enough at second and third to be able to be played there. So Correa does definitely complicate things for me. And because Arroyo was kind of fine last year, he's obviously a better defender than Correa is. But the bat is just non-existent, even though he hit fairly well last year at the major league level. So we'll kind of see what we end up doing with him. Royce is probably going to move over to shortstop for the first time in a while for this team. I just don't really have any other options I like there. I don't like starting Arroyo. Correa obviously is not playable at shortstop anymore, which more or less just leaves Royce. Because my shortstop option, he is not a shortstop. There's only a 50 overall there. The range is not high enough, in my opinion, to play short. But he's an option for second base, though, as well, where these ratings just, I don't understand why my scout says his ratings are that low for how well he's consistently hit over the last 3 years. So I have my questions about this. I think he's better than that, but we'll kind of see. As far as kind of my other shortstop options, I mean, there's not really like a ton. Where is that guy? Where did you go? It's not you. I have the one like super good defensive shortstop. Wait, why are you here? This is not where you're supposed to be. So I have an option like this of playing Bobby Mejia, who I'm going to move here and walk him. I can keep a closer eye on him. Because obviously this bat is non-existent, but he's super, super good defensively at short. So that is an option. Probably would want to give him like a split year at AA and AAA this year before having him jump up next year is potentially an option. There's also Coronel, who's not quite as good defensively as Mejia, but is actually, I think, more of a full-on prospect. Honestly, I would love to have Coronel being my second baseman. But there's not... I've got other guys that I want playing seconds, like Carrillo, that I don't really want playing short, so he'll get some second base reps at some point, because that might be his best position, but he's a very workable shortstop. So that's sort of what we're looking at here. Shortstop, center field are my two big question marks on this team, where I'll kind of have to figure out how to work around those issues. Because obviously we'll have Adrian, we'll have Baez in the corners again. Ramos hit pretty well for us in his little cup of tea that he had this year. Not super great defensively, but he will be around again for next year as well. I guess to kind of show off the guy, this was the other person I was looking at for my center field spot, was my first round pick from 2027, who hit really well in AA this year. We'll let him, he'll probably start the year in AAA. We'll probably, if Buxton does not re-sign, then we'll kind of let Lara probably be my fourth outfielder in the majors, and Lazcano can start the year in AAA, and then if we get the inevitable Buxton injury or Lara really struggles, then Lazcano can definitely play all three spots pretty well. So I think the floor for him is a pretty good fourth outfielder, but I think this is probably the guy I would prefer to be my long-term replacement for Buxton. So that's sort of where we're looking at hitting-wise. Pitching will probably be rocking this same rotation. I have explored a little bit trading Marquez because the contract's really not that bad. At this point, it's a 2-year deal with the second year being a player option. He's been kind of up and down. 27 and 28 haven't been super great years for us. Leagues. So, yeah, I mean, you kind of had 25 and 26 for both really good years. 27 and 28 have kind of gotten worse, but last year also was his lowest FIP minus of his entire time with me. So I don't really know what to think of that. So that's still something where that's kind of up in the air. But that's really, I think, the one potential move that might get made that would shake up the pitching staff a little bit. These top four are probably just going to be what they are. Medeiros definitely had his breakout last year, where we saw the real jump and kind of, I think he started to figure out how to use his stuff more out of the bullpen. It jumps to the 70 overall, was lights out for me last year, gave up the one home run in the playoffs, but other than that was pretty good in the playoffs. So he's kind of, I think, solidifies taking over the Colby White role as White takes over as my closer. Ortiz, Buedas, and Mazzucato will probably all be here in my bullpen. Buedas is probably the bigger question mark because he wasn't really good last year for me after being super good in 27. Because here, obviously, you can see the ERA not great, but the FIP was even worse. 9 walks in 17 innings is not great. So we'll kind of see what we end up doing with him. But I think that this is these 7 are probably going to be in my bullpen. And I think that the likely last guy is going to be George Klassen, where I think that as a starter, it's kind of a maybe to me. Like, obviously there's a chance that with 3 really good pitches he could be a good starter, but I think he's probably better suited as a reliever, kind of similar to Medeiros. So I think that that's likely what we'll see out of him, because he is out of options, and I frankly think that he's a pretty good potential piece for me where he could be kind of that 6th starter as well. Huesman does have one more option. So if we don't trade Marquez, then he probably again will be kind of jumping between the majors and AAA. Where like I think that he's a guy I'd like to be able to give more run in the majors too, but I do think that the 5 I have right now are probably better. But injuries, I don't know what they're gonna be like this year, because one of the big things that did happen for us is our longtime trainer did retire. So we have an offer out. Let's see if it will show us. To Sue Falsone, who is also outstanding at preventing arm injuries, because that's, to me, the biggest thing, is she seems like she's focused on arm stuff and is kind of good at everything else. And that's really the biggest thing that I want to focus on. So we will hopefully get her to be brought in as our trainer. But if we have more arm injuries than we've had in the past, then I'd like to have some more of these guys be around. I think I am going to let Austin Love walk. That trade ends up being pretty bad for us. He just really didn't develop into the higher end starter I thought he could. Just didn't really work out, and he was super good out of the bullpen for us either. So that trade unfortunately ends up being pretty bad. Even though we got Baez out of it as well, we got Mejia, who will probably see some time in the majors this year. So it's not all bad, but the main piece kind of flaming out is not what you want from a trade. So yeah, that's sort of the arbitration general plan stuff. I will be back shortly after the arbitration stuff all goes through. I'll make sure that the contracts that we talked about get signed, and we'll see you after free agency begins and we can go over some more stuff. And we are back. Free agents have filed. Arbitration is over. Byron Buxton did end up accepting the $18.9 million qualifying offer. So realistically, what that means for the team is that we're going to have to move somebody who's making a little bit more money to have money to kind of do things for not necessarily free agency, because I don't think we're going to be active there. But I think in terms of draft pick signings and the international free agent market, where I do still want to be active, I need some money to handle that. So when we kind of look at these salaries up here, Correa is untradeable. We did end up signing Corbin Burns to this contract. So obviously I'm not going to move him. I just extended him. Kirilloff is an option. Let me see. What is his kind of stuff going on right now? I might let's take a look and see what is out here for him. So people aren't really interested in him. So that makes him kind of he's not going to go anywhere. Buxton is obviously here on the qualifying offer. I'm not trading Duran. Miranda I don't really want to trade either, which leaves the pretty obvious person to move of Herman Marquez. I did a shop around. The most likely option here is going to be to the Mets, where I've kind of had a couple of things that I have kind of tried to see kind of what we're able to get in return for him. I'll kind of update you guys once we're actually a little bit farther in the offseason, see what ends up going on trade-wise with him. But I think that most likely we're going to end up moving him, free up that $16 million in salary, and kind of go from there. And kind of take that money as sort of that's going to be what's available for draft picks plus international free agents, which will leave us with $17 million available. The other option is, of course, I could cut down my development and scouting budgets a little bit, which I might actually cut this one slightly to open up a little bit more money, get me to $20 million once I am able to move Marquez, because I think that is something that's going to happen. And we'll kind of go from there. Because once you start getting down here, it's less money that it's really opening up by trading any of them. Make the argument that maybe Alvarez and Gutierrez are maybe people I should not have extended, or I should not have offered arbitration to with Buxton, but of course the timing on that. The Buxton thing was obviously a little bit of a gamble, whether or not he would actually take that 18.9. I don't hate the fact that he does, because I think that Lara and Lascano both need another year. And I think you can see we still have a lot of kind of our core is still around. Correa's not really part of that anymore. He's just this big money sink, which is obviously very unfortunate. Wokey, I hope he retires after this year so I don't have to pay him the $35 next year, because he's going to opt into this $35 million option. It's going to happen. I mean, I'm basically just cutting out that P. There's no way he doesn't take it. But I think that's sort of where we are financially. We're basically at this point, we're not like a top 5 market, but I guess we're up to a top 10 budget. The player payroll is obviously really high. We had coming off a really good year last year. We did get a little bit of that actual budget bump. We got an $8 million jump. Projecting, I think, 6 for next year. So not really a ton of money available for extensions at the moment. Player development-wise, obviously, we've kind of got some pieces. The bigger problem right now is I need a couple of these guys to make big jumps this year, because I have a lot of kind of these rookie ball, A ball, a couple in high A, but it's a lot of younger guys that are my prospects right now. So that's a little bit concerning. I need some people to make some jumps this year to be ready for 2030, where we might have to, where what we end up doing and like kind of dealing with options and stuff is going to be affected by how ready some of our young players are. So that's a potential concern there. So trade-wise, we're probably not going to do a whole lot. Free agent-wise, probably not going to do a whole lot either. I think the most interesting thing here is that Marcelo Mayer was not signed to a long-term deal by Boston, which to me is really surprising because he's only been good for them. Injury history, I guess there's starting to become a little bit more of one, but there's not a lot of this is just day-to-day stuff. He hasn't missed more than 5 weeks at any point in his career. Extremely popular 25-year-old shortstop. Very, very good defensively. Won a Gold Glove, 3-time All-Star, 3-time Silver Slugger. The fact that he's out here is pretty surprising to me. I'm not going to lie. But of course, with having Correa on the books means that signing him is not possible. Where this is definitely a thing where if there was a way to get rid of Correa, which there's not for the record, he won't waive the no trade clause. I would be in on this bidding for sure for Mayer. It's a superstar shortstop. If I could then move Royce back to second, go back to having that super good up the middle defense, I would love to do that. It's not an option. Josh Simpson's also out here as kind of probably, I guess I would say, the other superstar that is available. Not going to go after him. I have a lot of money tied up in pitching already. But interesting to see that Baltimore, after trading for him and him having a good year, did not elect to lock him up, though I guess if he wants $32 million, maybe Baltimore just couldn't afford that. I'm actually sort of curious. I want to go look at the salaries on these two teams just to sort of see what they're looking at. So they didn't have the money to pay him. They already had a ton of money locked up. See Sean Murphy, Juan Moncada. So they just couldn't afford to pay him. That's crazy. Also, what's crazy is I think I might be paying... Yeah, my payroll is higher than Boston. That's kind of absurd, to be honest. Yeah, they just didn't have the money, specifically this year, to pay him. Yeah, because they would be able to potentially lose Max Fried. They might lose that. They could just not pay Victor Gonzalez. I mean, I'm curious what some of the... I mean, if this is an arbitration, there's no way I'm paying him this money. Yeah. Oh, yeah, they have Giovanni Moran. This is where he ended up. As mostly a minor leaguer, they paid him $2.8 million. So that's interesting. And then if you look at Baltimore, obviously they're paying Adley and Grayson. To 125. Yeah, not a lot of money available for them either. Even though they've been generally pretty good. Yeah, so they locked up Tucker Biven, which I think makes a lot of sense. So yeah, I guess they just didn't have the money for him either, because they chose Adley and Grayson before, which I think are pretty logical things to do. Yeah, so that'll be interesting for them. So yeah, so I guess they just, neither team had the money available to lock up their superstar players. So those are kind of the two big guns that are out there. Flaherty's out here again. Akil Baddoo is out here. I think he's really more of a corner outfielder than a center fielder. He's a decent center fielder, but yeah, looks like the bats came down a little bit. He's had kind of a couple of really good years. Like 24 was really good. 27 was pretty decent. I'm guessing 24 is when he got these awards. Yeah. So he's out there. But I think realistically, we're not going to be doing anything in free agency. Our team's in pretty good spot. I don't think there's a need to kind of go after a higher end reliever. Somebody like this could be interesting. Oh, wait, his stamina's like way down. Because he was a starter for a while. And then, let's see. When did the stamina start to drop? Yeah, because it was 45 and then it dropped to 30 in February of 28. Was there an injury here? Yeah, so this was very much 2 elbow injuries. The stamina's gone, so he can no longer be a starter, but is obviously an absolute stud reliever. Munoz, yes, I mean, there's really good bullpen arms out here this year for sure, but I think our bullpen's in a pretty good spot. Where, I mean, you can see here 75, 75, 65, 70. Like I don't need to pay to have a fifth 70 plus reliever. That's just, I already have probably too much money tied up into my bullpen. It's fine the way it is. So as far as free agency goes, probably not a lot going to happen. We'll look to move Marquez, who's been kind of on and off for us, coming off of a year that was a little unlucky. based on the FIP being really low, but I'm not really sure why the FIP is so low here. Walks are up, strikeouts are the same, BABIP's about the same. So to me, this is a sign of aging is starting to get to him. And this FIP number, I don't believe. So I think moving on from him now is the right time to do it. Obviously, this is a contract that worked out really well for me. Of a guy that we picked up coming off of a rough year in Colorado and an injury. And then we've done pretty well with him, I think, all things considered. We've had 5 years of him in the major league, made 150 starts for us with a 3.83 ERA, 3.8 FIP, 800 innings. I think we've gotten our money's worth from the 5 years that we've gotten out of him. So I think we thank him for the work at this point, and we go ahead and move on. Which will then probably promote Levi Huisman into a starting role at the major league level. Klassen can kind of be the 6th starter and our long reliever. And a couple of these guys could be thrown into that role as well. Probably not Mazzucato, but Medeiros I think could be a starter if needed. The plan is still to work him out of the bullpen, but again, if there was need to put him into a starting role, I can do that. There's some other okay options in the minors, but nobody that I really want to be getting roles, which means if injuries hit us this year at starter, we're kind of thin. So going into that with the new trainer, there's a lot of risk here that I'm taking with my starting pitching level, but I think to deal with the money crunch that I'm starting to have a little bit, I think this is what we have to do. So we're going to move on from Marquez, get in some prospects, and kind of go from there. Hope that we can get some development out of our starting pitchers. We've got some guys that we really like as far as kind of young starting pitching goes. Oviedo and Chavarria are people that get asked about obviously quite a bit. Even Jalen Bass is someone who pops up a lot in trade deals. So there's people that are interesting down here. Hector Belton as well. The problem is they're all farther away. None of them, to me, are viable options, specifically in 2029. Maybe in 2030 there'll be options. That makes us thin this year. Trading away Marquez is not great for our depth. But I think we could make it work if we have to. Let's just hope we don't have to. So, yeah. I will be back later. Now, a little bit of time has passed. We did make the Marquez trade. Let's go ahead and just call it up this way. Oh, I misspelled that. All right, Herman Marquez was in fact traded to the New York Mets. We did also give up this catching prospect, Jesus Acuna. Farther down could be something. It's not a bad profile. Low intelligence, I don't love. Doesn't have like leadership or anything like that for catcher. I've got, I think, 3 other guys who are in a similar spot of the organization to him that I like all better. So I was fine giving him up in exchange for 2 prospects. This guy who my scout is super, super high on as a bullpen piece, left-hander. Not something I have a ton of right now. I do wish he threw harder than this. But a guy who would actually get to this point would be a really good left-hander to have in my bullpen. Had a pretty good last year in rookie ball. Was maybe a little bit lucky. The BABIP is a little high, though. Control, honestly, not too bad, given where he kind of currently is. We'll start him out in A-ball next year and kind of see where that goes. As well as I'm kind of continuing to grab sort of like potential center fielders that have the ability to play there or in the corners as kind of 4th outfield types. That's sort of been the other thing I've been looking at. Had a really good year last year in rookie ball. Should it even be, I think, pretty good in high A this year. is kind of the, I guess, would now be sort of third in line for me center field wise after Lara and Lazcano. So that is that trade. The other thing that we did was we went ahead and extended Julius Sanchez because I think he's only going to get way more expensive than this down the road if he continues to have the types of years that I think he can have. So this is the extension that we gave him. 2-team options for his age 31 and 32 season. It's a pretty similar deal, I think, to what we gave Gomez, just a higher end version of it, because I think Sanchez is just a much higher end pitcher. So as far as what that now does for us salary wise, we're now down to $217 million for this year, meaning that we have kind of that roughly $20 million available. Fan interest was basically the same as it was before after trading away Marquez and extending Sanchez. Payroll drops to 12th now. And this is kind of more manageable, where there's still stuff that we can do. As far as this 210 number, I think there's a decent chance we don't re-up Alvarez. I'd be very surprised if we re-up Gutierrez at this point. Kirilloff might actually be tradable at that point as well, depending on what we want to do. If anything happens to Miranda, we can get out of his deal starting now. There's some of these over $1 million deals for young relievers that we will kind of have to look at a little bit. There's kind of a lot of money that starts to be available to come off the books starting in these next couple of years. So we can kind of start to reset some of the books a little bit moving forward. And yeah, we kind of have our two cornerstone pieces for kind of the next core are now locked up in Mario Adrian, who is our hitter core for moving forward, and Julius Sanchez, who will be our ace. And kind of his money kind of lines up pretty well with Corbin Burns of really it's only this 2032, assuming Burns opts into this, where I'll be paying Sanchez a lot of money and Burns a lot of money. So we'll see kind of if that ends up actually happening or not. But yeah, that's the deals that we have now done, and pretty early on in free agency. Normally I do this in the next video, but I want to talk about this. Is Marcelo Meyer signed super early to the Dodgers for what I think for them is a super good deal. It's $30 million a year for a 5-year deal for a 25-year-old. So, oh, there's a player option in here. Okay. So that's maybe not quite as good of a deal. I haven't actually fully looked at this yet. So this is maybe not quite as good of a deal because I think that it's pretty likely he'll opt out here, which makes him which is intriguing to me. If he has 2 more good years, you'll notice that this lines up with when Correa comes off my books. I think we'll make a run at him here if he does indeed opt out, because this guy is super good. And having a guy like this around would be really nice. Having that 4.5 to 5 WAR shortstop. Yeah, I think we'll make a run at him in 2 years, more than likely. Assuming he opts out at that point and the Dodgers don't kind of re-up him. But, I mean, this is a really good deal for the Dodgers. Especially if he doesn't opt out after that point and he continues to produce at anywhere near the level he has so far in his career. Because, like, this guy has only been really good at the major league level. Like, his rookie year at 21 was 1 WAR as a below average hitter. Kind of took some time to adjust to the majors. Wasn't super great that first year. Every year since, I mean, in the last 4 years, it's been 23.5 WAR. So, yeah, you obviously take that for a player like this. Boston just couldn't afford to keep him, which is rough for them. I mean, this is a really, really good young player. Who, I forget, is this a real life? Yeah, this is a real life prospect of Boston's, who is looks like it probably is about a top 30 prospect in real life. So it'll be interesting to see if his career ends up looking anything like this. Boston obviously would have really loved to have had that additional year of control. where this is something where that changed arbitration definitely hurts Boston quite a bit. But yeah, we ended up doing these couple things. We'll talk about more free agency in the next video, but this popped up while I was going for the extension with Sanchez, making the Marquez deal. So I just kind of wanted to talk about this because I think this is really interesting. I think this is one of the best players in this save file, and he's only 25. Like, this type of player just doesn't become available in free agency this young ever. Like, this is crazier than like the Correa signing in real life. Of like those types of players being available is just, it's unheard of. And especially somebody who was with Boston, like, this is crazy. But that's going to be it for this off-season planning episode where we actually got to see some stuff get done. We're not going to do anything in free agency, I don't think, unless for whatever reason, if somebody is still available, if one of these really good people is still available, doesn't want a lot of money, wants like a 1-year deal or something, then we'll look at it if something kind of falls into our lap. But I think outside of that, we're not going to be active in free agency. Don't think we're going to be looking at any more trades or anything like that either. Maybe some starting pitching depth is something that I might look into. Maybe I'll go out and try to find like a 5th starter on a 1-year deal or something like that. But yeah, because everything else here is just kind of relievers. Nothing super interesting. But yeah, that is going to be it for this off-season planning episode. I hope you guys have a good rest of your day, and I will catch you in the next one. Bye.